Welcome to The Breadwinners, the podcast about the never-ending hustle and its impact on all aspects of our lives. We're interested in what it takes to keep everything going.
This podcast is about working, family, research, and policy. We consider the research, talk to experts, and share our takes on what we're all learning about breadwinning. Each week, I'm joined by Jennifer Owens. She writes about working, wellness, and women, and founded the Working Mother Research Institute.
And I'm joined by Rachael Ellison. She is an executive coach and management consultant who works with companies big and small to design workplace policies that work for all employees. And we're going to talk about a lot of employees today. We're going to talk about hourly employees. And we have a wonderful stat that says there are 82.3 million of us in America who are paid an hourly wage. And that is 58% of all wage and salary workers. Gosh, that's a lot. That is a lot. And you know that it makes me think often when I drive home to my hometown on the west side of Cleveland, you see all the kids working wage jobs because, that's what we all did. But I think well, obviously, if it's 58% of all workers, it's adults too. Like that's a really common setup for job now.
Yeah.
I sound surprised, but I guess it's like I haven't had an hourly job except by consulting in a long time.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things when you look over the wall and you're like, geez, that's the majority of the working public here. And one of the things with that, though, is that strata of working, they don't control their own schedules.
Right.
We were talking about it at Working Mother a million years ago. We did the best companies for hourly workers. And consistent scheduling was a huge issue at the time.
Yep. I think that's really something that companies who have hourly workers and the hourly workers themselves have to deal with. And as we know, irregular work scheduling leads to happy, satisfied, non-stressful situations. No, I'm just
irregular
kidding.
Work does?
I'm just...
I knew it all along that was the secret to happiness. I need to be more irregular. Yeah. I mean, how in the world, because I see the world through a working mother lens, how as a working parent do you freaking deal with childcare if your schedule is skit-scatting all over the day and the week? You got scheduled for Monday. You got scheduled for, this week you're working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Next week it's Tuesday, Friday, Monday. Who knows? Not to mention the hours within those days. It's just impossible to build a working family life around.
No, it is impossible. I remember reading, who wrote this article? Link to it, but there was an article about kind of 24-hour daycare that existed a while ago.
Yes, I remember that. Yep, I do. And that is to not acknowledge. I mean, I acknowledge the fact that it's one of the joys of shift-based work and hourly work is that if you have control over it, you can set a schedule that works with your family. I used to know a couple when I was in newspapers where the husband specifically became a copy editor so that his wife, who was a teacher, they could do childcare, 2 ships passing in the night, but they did it so that they saved money and it was always a parent home, the kids. And so they picked shifts, essentially, even though they were both salaried, but they picked a work life that worked for them. But they were able to, they were in a position to actually control their shifts in the sense, which is different than what we're talking about. Whereas, there have been these attempts to have fair scheduling. And there's Seattle has the secure scheduling ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
That requires major employers to post schedules 14 days in advance. Like one of the ways you can do flexible work is team-based scheduling for shift workers. Often you would hear pushback from companies with shifts-based employees, workforces saying, oh, we can never do flexible work because, you got to cover shifts and all that. And it has been shown that you put shifts together and I'll cover you this week. You cover me. But within that, the only really way you can do that if you know what the shift is going to be 2 weeks from now and plan ahead.
Right.
Yeah. And then, of course, there is the other big, terrible impact, which is the weird word of clopeting. Basically, you have employees close and open
Oh, clopeting. You said that before and I didn't catch that term.
Yeah, that, there were these shifts where, you get to shut the place down at midnight and then you're reopening at 7 the next morning. Like you're not, there are places where they'll have best practices that there has to be a certain set number of hours between the end of a shift and the beginning of a shift.
Right. I mean, I'm not sure. Does that count as the night shift? It does, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Right.
Let's call it that way.
Let's call it that way. So working the night shift is associated with higher absenteeism and lower productivity, which is not surprising. Whereas flex time is the opposite.
Right.
So, but I definitely know people, nurses in particular, who've chosen to work the night shift, or that I know, nurses in particular, just to kind of get it, work kind of a compressed work week, which has flex time.
That they choose, right? It always comes down to autonomy,
right,
like trusting, right, and control of being able to trust your employees and have enough resources that you can cover all the shifts.
Yeah, that's a big piece of it.
Well, and it must be more difficult because I know there are in big companies, they have automated scheduling because they're trying to be so efficient with, we humans are expensive. Labor is expensive. Right. So, like how can I have, I don't want to have people standing around not doing anything when it comes to retail on the floor and all that sort of stuff. But I don't know, is there anything that they can do in terms of like matching schedules to employee needs?
Right. Well, they call that person schedule fit.
Oh, okay.
There's an article that actually just came out or pretty recently came out. It was July, so years ago in pandemic.
Yeah, in pandemic time. So that was last eon. Got it.
Rethinking work schedules, consider these 4 questions. And it was in Harvard Business Review. And so one of the questions was really thinking about how to align work schedules with the needs, desires, and personalities of employees, right? So thinking about not only what works best for the schedule, but also some employees might be better at working the night shift, right?
Yeah.
Some employees might be, they might be night owls. Some employees might be morning people.
Well, and you've talked about this before, about having a worker-centric view. Like as we come back from the pandemic, seems to be what that question is calling for, is that the answer is, what if you put the worker at the center and then figure out the schedule? Would that be so bad? Can you do that?
Well, that's the big question. Can you do that? Right?
Did I just add 5th question to Harvard Business Review? Because if I did, I'm very proud of myself.
Oh, yeah. I think one of the points that they make in this article is, we've changed so much. We've given employees so much autonomy in this pandemic to decide where they work and, for the most part, and this can be extended to when they work as well.
Okay. And did that cause the apocalypse? Because I'm just wondering if remote work killed this. Okay. Got it. On it.
When it all falls down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it didn't. It definitely left a lot of people scratching their heads. There's still people, I'm curious about how companies like Starbucks, companies that rely on this hourly scheduling in a very specific way, how that's going to work, how they're really going to be able to give more autonomy.
Yeah, they do know that, it's the Shift Project at Harvard. So we're all about Harvard today, studying the impact of what Seattle did in terms of having like schedules you could rely on.
Right.
That they found that more predictable hours led to increased job satisfaction, happiness, restfulness, and declines in material hardship. If we could just start from the basis of a worker-centric approach where we're saying, hey, here's how your schedule will look. Do you have a problem with it? It seems like it'd be the better way to go, as, if we've all managed people. Like, wouldn't you want to know what the deal was 2 weeks from now so that you would know, oh, here comes a problem? I don't get why you wouldn't, but I think maybe it ties back to those like automated scheduling things where they're like, we're just moving pieces around a chessboard. Right.
I mean, we also have to remember, I think we being companies, because somehow that's us now.
You're the man. We've made you the man. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. there are costs. I mean, we've sort of touched on this throughout this conversation, but, there are costs. There are costs we know that absenteeism, that lower productivity, that impacts on health, those are not just the employee's problem, right? They are costs to the employer, and in a number of different ways. And there's even a stat, which is a little bit scary, that there was a 2016 study that tracked 189,000 women for a period of over 24 years. And these folks had rotating night shift schedules for more than 10 years, had a 15 to 18% greater risk of developing coronary heart disease.
Oy. Oh,
so
no.
We're not, we're talking about some major
impacts.
Some major impact. And it's not, I think that some companies have the tendency to be short-sighted about that without thinking about the broader implications of that.
Right. And then, there's this straight up cost of turnover. If your employees can't live while they work, they will leave. And then even if there are lots of people looking for work, you still have to find them, vet them, onboard them, which is all like, and then also the time that, during the finding, there's no one working that gig. And then you have other people maybe having to fill in, and then they get annoyed, and it lowers the morale and the engage, like all that stuff is a hard cost. It's always hard to figure out, that was always a thing with the working mothers stats we did. I had found one study that put it at 150% of someone's salary, turnover between the gap, the onboarding, the ramp up, and all that sort of stuff. I always felt that was a bit of a wishy-washy stat, but I used it because I needed some sort of number. So I'm showing you behind the scenes of how I came up with some stats. Thank you for the economist who came up with that one, because I used it all the time. But even so, it's directional in the sense of at any level in your organization, someone leaving is going to cost you money.
Yeah.
And so figuring this stuff out, now I'm thinking of back when we started Best Law Firms for Women at Working Mother. I feel like I'm going through a whole history lesson today in my head. The original setup of law firms at the time was that they completely afford to have a massive turnover of new associates. It was built into the model. So they never, and I'm talking super broadly here, but they didn't have to change their ways as an industry because there was always more, and they could afford that 150% cost per associate turning over. It was built into the model somehow. And then there was a fallout in however the legal industry works, and it became much more incumbent upon them to save money by making it more palatable to work in white shoe corporate law firms. In addition to trying to be more humane, what we were trying to exploit with showing best practices. So I think that all these things, like, it just can't always be a way of running your company where you build in that much turnover.
Yeah.
I was going all the way around the block to get back to this, but thank you for following me. But the point being that it just doesn't seem like a great way to run a company to be anti-worker. I guess that's what I'm saying. That's what I've always been saying.
Yeah.
No,
that is the refrain. It is the refrain. I think what we're seeing, though, one of the conversations that I've been having is, I wonder if companies would feel differently if there was more support to the employee to figure it out. I'm not saying, when we're talking about schedule fit, that's one thing. But I think that what I'm seeing in my workplace is folks are thinking about how to bring people back from home. And, they're also recognizing people aren't quite ready and prepared to do that. Like, there are skills that can be built, right, to help them figure out how to, to help somebody figure out person schedule fit. Ultimately the onus is on them, but there can be ways to kind of create more awareness and better skills at how to navigate.
And you know what that does? That was one of the things we learned with doing the hourly workers list. It didn't matter where you are, if you're hourly, you're salaried. But if you felt a connection to your company, if you felt there was things you could learn, places you could go then it became a career. It could be an hourly career. There's, it doesn't matter the payment mechanism. It's how involved and engaged you are with the company. And I think that's a step to having that feeling and feeling that engagement. There was a story that we love to tell. There was a lady at Petco who had seen something, like some sort of you're doing it wrong. We could be saving blah, blah, blah. Yeah. You know why? Because she's on the floor. She's dealing with your customers every day, and she was an hourly worker. And then they promoted her into salary because the minute they saw how smart she was and she had come up with this idea on how to make things more effective on the floor, they were like, we need you in management. And if I remember the story right, they really had to court her into it because that was not the job she wanted. She's like, I actually chose to work this way because it worked for my family. And they waited for her basically for years. And she had moved into management and the like. But yeah, that's the other part of that. Every single employee is a valued resource. If we can get this conversation going, and have respect, man, you'll just be so much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a balance. We had that in talking about flexible work. People say, well, how do you get a flexible work schedule if my boss will? Well, one of the things you have to do is put yourself in the shoes of your manager. What is it that will make them feel comfortable and all that sort of jazz? So I think you're right. Now that I've put you in the shoes of the man to represent the companies, that, it has to benefit them as well. They can't just be giving.
Yeah.
This is a business.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think coming back that now that we've proven or we've at least experienced more autonomy among our employees?
What do I think coming back? What do I think we're going to do?
Well, this impact hourly workers, I think it's going to impact salaried workers.
Oh, for sure. I think it's going to impact salaried workers. And I think we can't look at the autonomy in isolation, right? So there's just a number of factors to consider. One of them is, sure, we've had more autonomy. The other is we've all gone through a collective trauma to different degrees, and there's a fear about going back, that is legitimate around public health, right? So there's a lot of stress that workers are under, and I just don't know how we parse those out. But I think generally people are going to come back and I think my concern would be that folks are going to come back and there's going to be this culture of working all the time because we've had people. Because
we've lost something. We're trying to gain back.
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah. I wonder.
And that, a lot of these hourly worker jobs are women, right? Yeah. It's hospitality, it's retail, it's even childcare shifts, daycare centers. A lot of these jobs are women. These are the jobs that are disappearing or disappeared way early on. We have an early episode way early in the pandemic talking about all the jobs that were oversubscribed or are oversubscribed by women, especially women of color. That if we try to plug back in and try to scramble to somehow make up lost ground or whatever we're doing, I look forward to having that conversation with you in about 6 months' time. Right. Oh, well, thank you. I think this is very interesting because this really is the topic that will come back. This is the part of the economy completely unstable, right? Are these industries that are hourly worker predominant.
Yeah. So for sure.
Well, thank you for joining us on The Breadwinners. We love breadwinners on the hourly side, on the salary side. We love all the breadwinners. You will find links to what we discussed in the episode description. Email us anytime at thebreadwinnerspod@gmail.com or visit us at thebreadwinnerspodcast.com.
Please remember to subscribe to our podcast. Isn't my co-host delightful? She just makes me laugh. And to rate and review it. It really does help us grow. And until next week, keep hustling.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.